Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, we're going to analyze the serve of Denis Shapovalov. Now, first, this video is sponsored by playercourt.com. If you're looking to play more tennis and you want to find people in your local area to practice with or compete against, use my link in the description, playercourt.com/2minutetennis. All right, we're going to go step by step here through Denis's serve. I've had people asking for me to do Denis's serve. I'm really excited. So the first thing is his grip. And, it's a little hard to see what grip players use when they're hitting a forehand, backhand serve, right? Sometimes it's hard, but what you can use is the racket face. And we notice that his racket face is actually open at the beginning of the serve. I love this. I love when players have the racket resting on the ball and the racket face slightly open. Check your serve, video yourself, and see how you're beginning your serve. If you've got a true continental, most likely your racket face is going to be open at that point. Now, he rocks his weight back, and you can see his weight rocking back at the beginning of his serve. But something that he does here that I'm not a big fan of is how high he tosses. So I'm going to use a little, we'll go right here. What I like to do is I like to go when the ball is at the top of the head, I like to use a timer. And for me, the kind of range of acceptability for the amount of time between the toss, you can see the timer going, between the toss and the hit is anywhere from 0.55 seconds to 0.9 seconds. So anywhere in there, to me, for recreational tennis players, is kind of the range of acceptability. So we're going to use the timer here, and we're going to see how long it takes for Denis to hit the ball. So there he is hitting at 1 second. So to me, Denis's toss is too high. One, it makes it harder to really time the ball because the higher the ball is, the faster it's going to be falling when you're hitting it. But also, when you toss the ball that high, you have to delay the racket, delay the body, and it really actually kind of hurts the timing that you want on your serve when it comes to the free-flowing energy from the body to the racket to the ball. So for you, I would actually ask you not to toss this high. And if I were Denis's coach, I would absolutely be working on getting a lower toss for him. Yes. Is he a world-class player? Yes. Would I, lose 0-0 to him and never have a chance of beating him? Of course. But so does his coach. His coach can't beat him, right? So it's not like you can only coach someone who you're better than. That means, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal would never have coaches, right? That's not how it works. So our job as coaches is to help students improve. And even if the student is a world-class player, they can still improve. Now, one of the things that happens then here is he has to have a big scissoring of his racket where the racket is down here and the ball is up here. I would actually ask you to try to get your arms to come more up at the same time, not level, but that the racket actually comes up more like Roger Federer. Roger Federer hits the ball at 0.83 seconds, where, Shapo here is at 1 second. So there's a drastic difference in the height of the toss between the two. And obviously, Federer has one of the best serves of all time. I just checked out Sampras as well. My favorite player growing up, he was at 0.93 seconds. So still pretty high, and obviously, a little higher than what I'm saying from 0.55 to 0.9. But for recreational players, that range is going to be the best thing. All right. The next thing has to do, and I absolutely love this, has to do with his trophy position. And this position right here is excellent, absolutely excellent. When you notice this, if I draw a line across the top of his head, so that is the lowest his body gets. What you want is when your head is at its lowest, and that's occurring because of the knee bend. When your head is at its lowest, that's when your tossing hand and your racket should be at their highest in the trophy position. This is really important when it comes to maximizing the leg drive. The leg drive, to be honest, doesn't give you a ton of racket speed. I'm being honest here, right? So world-class, wheelchair tennis players can hit the ball at, 100 miles an hour. This leg drive actually produces quite a small percentage of power when it comes to pro players. It's important, and it's important percentage, but it doesn't produce like 50, 80, 90% of the power that people think. What we want for the power source of the legs to be used wisely is for the tossing arm and the racket to go down as the body begins going up. And you can see this. His body is going down as the arm and racket are getting up. Now watch his body go up as his his tossing hand begins going down, and then his racket begins going down. Look at this. Look how his body is going up with the tossing arm and the racket synchronized. This is so important. A lot of players, a lot of juniors especially, they start dropping the racket way too early. Then the leg drive goes up and their body begins exploding up. We want to maximize the shoulder stretch, and we want to maximize how flexible and how much down the racket can go with our body coinciding, where our body goes up and our racket goes down. We want those two things coinciding. So what we need is for the lowest point of our leg drive, or lowest point of our knee bend, I should say, to occur when our racket is still up and our tossing hand is still up. Dropping this tossing arm is so early, is so common with recreational players. And I have to make sure that I keep my tossing arm up. This is not something, that I'm perfect at. We're all trying to get better with our serves. Now, when he makes this move, you'll notice he's not hitting the birthday hat. And that's fine. You don't have to hit the birthday hat. Nadal wouldn't hit the birthday hat. Sampras wouldn't hit the birthday hat. My favorite player ever, really. And you can see that his strings are facing up. Roger Federer does the same thing here, where the strings are actually facing up at this point. Now, for recreational players to go palm up in this position, and I don't even call this palm up, where his palm is up and his strings are up. And the reason I don't call it palm up is because his racket, when it comes around, is now on edge. And you can see his strings facing directly to the side. He's in a supinated position. I would say 1 out of 10,000 recreational players, club players, who ever get into this position where their palm is up and their strings are up, actually get their racket on its edge at this point. So if you're checking out your swing and you see that you go palm up here, it's going to be okay as long as your racket is on edge. It's vital that you're in a supinated position, so you're forced to pronate as you're striking the ball. That is actually why I actually teach more of a Federer motion, where the racket comes in over the head with the strings pointing down, where the racket comes in over the head like Osaka hitting a birthday hat. It's much easier for recreational players to get into this on-edge position. That's why. And I've had people, when I teach the birthday hat, people say, "Hey, Ryan, your racket, you're teaching us to hit the birthday hat. Shapo doesn't hit the birthday hat." You're right, but Shapo comes around on edge like this. So he comes up on edge. You can see the beautiful pronation as he's hitting the ball, where his strings are facing off to his right, and now his strings are facing off to his left. So there's really a 180-degree change in where his strings are pointing. What a lot of recreational players do here is they have their strings facing up, and then after they contact, they have their strings facing down, which is not the fastest way you're going to be able to move the racket through the hitting zone. So he's obviously doing this correctly. I absolutely love it. Now, I want to show you something about his right arm, his tossing arm. When your tossing arm drops, it's important that it drops and then it stops for a second in front of you to become a reactive break. Shapo is very famous for this. And you see a lot of players trying to copy this. Please don't think that this is giving you anything. It's not. It's a coolness factor. You see Kyrgios do it, and a lot of players, pro players do it. I feel like Kyrgios and Shapo do it to look cool, to be honest. But you look at juniors and they're so focused on this this tossing hand going behind them, that what happens is they actually don't do what it should do. There are 3 things that you want the tossing arm to do. You want it to actually toss the ball. You want it to stay up until your leg drive is ready to explode up. And then when it drops, I want you to watch how his arm is actually visible in front of him and how still it stays through contact. Look how still his tossing arm is as he's hitting the ball. So he's not dropping this arm and then yanking it behind him so that he can rotate. That's actually not what you want to do. You don't want to rotate as you're hitting the ball. This uncoiling and explosion of the body produces a shoulder stretch, but then we want a reactive break. And the reactive break is where we actually slow the body down to help accelerate the hitting arm. And that's exactly what he does. He actually helps slow the body's rotation by keeping this arm in front of him. When he does that, then the racket accelerates vibrates over his hand. And obviously he does throw that arm back. Again, if you want to do this, by all means, do it. But please, if you want to say that's the fourth thing that the tossing arm does, that's the one that really has the least value whatsoever. A lot of coaches and players talk about balance, and you got to have balance out of the serve. The arm in the back is not what causes people to be off balance. What really causes them to be off balance is the toss, being not on the correct side or too far behind them. That's really what causes the biggest problems when it comes to balance. I like how his back foot kicks up on the toe. This is what you see the vast majority of players do, just because when you toss into the court and when you lean and land inside the court, typically your back is a little more forward, so your back leg kicks up. That's going to be more of a balance issue than actually that tossing arm. All right, let me show you his serve, slow motion right now, and then I'll show it to you in front of the camera. Now, don't forget, soon I'm going to be holding my 2-Minute Tennis virtual tennis camp live on Zoom on Saturday, March 12th from 12 to 4 p.m. New York City time. The class is $247, and in these 4 hours, you are going to learn more about tennis than any tennis camp you have ever taken. I guarantee it. We're going to talk about single strategy, essential double strategy, all the techniques of every single stroke, every single grip you would ever want to need in order to play your best tennis, and even proper footwork. And everyone who attends also gets a free private lesson with me on Zoom, where in the future you can send me videos of your serve, backhand, forehand. We'll meet live on Zoom, and I will teach you exactly how to gain confidence, win more matches, and what? Play better tennis. This is an incredible event. Make sure you join me. Go to 2minutetennis.net after this video to sign up. All right, the continental grip. When he starts, Denis starts with his racket face open. I absolutely love that he has his racket open. You see a lot of players begin their serve with their strings pointing down. If you're someone who bounces the ball with your racket, I want you to get out of that habit. I know there are some pros and very high-level pros who bounce the ball with their racket, but they don't have trouble with their grip. A lot of recreational club players, they'll bounce the ball and they'll bounce, use that grip, which is the forehand grip, and then serve. So you kind of have to get out of that habit of bouncing the ball with your racket if you're someone who's struggling with the grip. So no more, only bounce with the hand and have your racket face slightly open. The next thing, work on your toss. See how low you can toss the ball and still hit a great serve. That doesn't mean the lower the better and you're only tossing the ball at eyebrow level. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of pros toss the ball, in my opinion, way too high. The higher you toss, the more you have to wait and wait and wait. And sometimes that's not good for the energy flow from the body to the racket to the ball. So my recommendation is anywhere between 0.55 and 0.9 seconds. So serve and measure your toss and see how long that ball is in the air. Now, what I really liked about Denis is when he was in his trophy position, he's more like this. His arm is a little less than 90 degrees bent. When he's in this position, his tossing arm is really high, his racket is at its highest point, but his knee bend is at its deepest. So when the arms are up, the body is at its lowest, and then it reverses. Then the arms start to go down and the body should go up. Now, I'm a fan of this. And the reason I'm a fan of bringing the racket in over your head with the strings pointing down is because it helps club players who watch my videos to come around on edge. On edge is important so that we can pronate and hit a lot of speed and be able to still hit spin on the ball as well. What a lot of recreational players do is once their racket face opens, they stay open. So film yourself. If you're getting your racket on edge like this, or even like Federer, who's got his racket face slightly closed at this point, then you're good. That's really the key here. We need a circular swing and that the racket comes around on edge or even slightly closed. And Denis does that. So would I be forcing him into a birthday hat serve? Not necessarily. If I were Sampras's coach, would I have been forcing him into a birthday hat serve? Not necessarily, no. I'm not forcing anyone to use it. It's most players go palm up and hit flat into the back, which is why I try to get them on the other end of the spectrum, which is knock the party hat off, strings down, which gets them into that on-edge position. So he lays his racket open. He does a tremendous job. I'm not as flexible as he is. He gets his forearm perfectly parallel to the ground. I can't even do it, especially at a slow speed. I'm just not flexible enough in my arm. But he does a great job of bringing his racket around on edge. This is important so that when you go up, and I'm going to duck down here so I don't hit the ceiling. You want the racket on edge because then the racket is forced to pronate to present the strings to the ball. And a body in motion tends to stay in motion and the racket just keeps going. So that's that 180-degree difference. Strings are facing right now to your left. Now my strings are facing off to my right. Denis was like this. His racket was on its edge and he was making this move. And that's the move that you want to see, that the strings are on edge prior to hitting and then actually on edge, meaning you could balance a coin on the edge of the racket after hitting. When you do that, you get a tremendous amount of speed that culminates from the body, again, to the arm and through all the links of the body into the ball. We saw that Denis was not throwing his tossing hand behind him, but rather he was keeping it in front of him as he was hitting the ball. This is what you see the pros do. Even the pros who you think just go like this. You know, people talk about Roddick and how Andy Roddick would put his hand behind him. He did, but it was long after he tucked his arm in against the body. Look at Andy Roddick serve. Look at how he tucks his tossing arm against his body as he's hitting the ball. Then when he's done, he goes like this. The most important thing you can do with that arm once it begins to drop is to bring it up against the body. What that does is it stops the body's rotation, and that's a reactive brake that accelerates the hitting arm. Now we saw him, land on that foot. He did have his foot, his tossing hand behind him, but he had the back foot up on the toe. He jumped into the court. His back foot up in the air, and he jumped forward into the court, which is a common thing that I would actually recommend that you do. The reason I make these videos is so that you can film yourself. You can go out and practice, and then you can look at your serve, and you can say, okay, what did I learn on 2-Minute Tennis on YouTube? And what can I now apply to my game? That's why I'm doing this. So I don't just want you to watch these videos. I want you to actually apply them to your game. And when you do, there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.